Why don't you help yourself to some worms and cockroaches?
The following video contains spoilers. We suggest watching the episodes alone in the dark. Merry Wormsmas, every cub! Catastrophe here, wrangling worms and wrangling bullcrap. Since tonight, we roped in a big stinker. Against all odds, we finally find ourselves confronting one of the most infamous titles of the Goosebumps library. The fan-hated Go Eat Worms.
My Satan sense is tingling.
Do I even need to detail how despised this tale is? Go Eat Worms is easily the most unpopular R.L. Stine fable of the franchise. It was a garbage book which Goose fans all hated, so naturally, it was also a garbage barge episode that sunk to rock bottom. Pretty much both sides of the fanbase hate this title equally, as it fails in both novel and adaptation form. I've never heard anyone proclaim they liked this episode. Not even viewing it as mid. No, just plain bad. Even R.L. Stine himself openly admits that he hates this story too. This and The Barking Ghost are the two stories which our beloved author Stine proclaims he regrets creating. Our Lord and Horror Savior warns everyone that even he dislikes how this and A Stupid Dog story turned out, confessing that both are the dumbest schlock he ever wrote.
You were the chosen one!
Fortunately, we already euthanized The Barking Ghost on our channel, which you should all watch, by the way. But now it's time to dig up some real dirt. Goose fans do not fondly gaze back upon this story, mostly because it has all the worst elements of our favorite horror show. Some fans go so far as to brand it as a top 5 worst episode of Goosebumps. It's that hated. The kids are unlikable, it's lousy at dark comedy, the monsters are lazy, the scares are even lazier, the plot's a mess, it butchers the book, and worst of all, its concept is not all that creative. If it isn't blatant, Stine's embarrassing fail is a spooky creature feature revolving around the creepiest crawly nobody has ever feared. Worms.
And it already sucks.
Yeah, spoilers, but I'm just gonna say this here and now. Worms are not scary, but that's not gonna stop our classic Nightmare Hour from trying anyway. To make matters worse, it's another adaptation which plays fast and loose with the source material, meaning that the book's events are heavily altered, which is a good thing because the book sucks. I fully understand why Stine hates his wormy book, because it's chock full of never-ending padding, dull as hell fluff, random events that go nowhere, and doesn't utilize the concept as well as Tim Jacobus's epic art tricks you into believing it would. It's a compressed adaptation, purging most of the plot, but does adapt the basic structure of Todd's journey as a standalone episode. Does torching away half the bad stuff of a bad novel work in the show's favor? Well, that's what we plan to find out. Even when Goosebumps has bad stories, there's often a speck of hope there, and I have seen some good intentions in the worst entries, so maybe we might uncover a gem lost deep underground.
Not bloody likely.
You all love our Museum of Terror, so we should get to the famous terror that's terrifying for all the wrong reasons. Grab your fishing bait and bug spray, because we gotta combat a rejected kaiju fanfic. This is our wormtacular excavation on the infamous Goosebumps experiment, Go Eat Worms.
'Cause that's what friends do. That's what friends do. 'Cause that's what friends do.
So, our episode opens up with
Worms and cockroaches!
beginning in the wormy hole of our main protagonist, Todd Barstow, who's hanging with his bro Danny prepping for a science experiment, featuring his spirit animal, the titular worms. And literally first second, we reach our largest problem in the episode. our main character. Todd Barstow is without a doubt one of the worst kid protagonists of Goosebumps. He's a douchey prankster with an obsession with bugs, especially his fave, the worms, as he loves punking his sister Bridget with grossness.
Must have been something it ate.
Todd sucks. This kid's a worm, a mean-spirited idiot bully who acts like a Sentinel Prime towards everyone around him, but Danny. This was clearly designed to be a karmic comeuppance tale, as Todd abuses animals and tortures them too, where he's supposed to learn to not be a dick, which is a good lesson for children. But the prob is, he's far too unsympathetic to actually like, as if him being cruel to others wasn't enough to hate him. The show genuinely wants us to feel for him and root for his redemption arc, but it bombs. The brat's just a total puke.
Man, when she let up that squeal, I thought my ears were gonna pop. Worms are the best thing to use if you want to gross someone out. I mean, you should have heard Regina the time I put a handful of night crawlers into the bathtub. You could hear her squeal all the way across town.
What an asshole!
Todd's often cited as a more hate-worthy character than Evan Ross, because he's not only dumb as hell, but a sadistic idiot bully who sucks. I agree, since Evan Ross actually got salvaged by the show, whereas Barstow's an example of how to fail at making a lovable jerk. I don't want to see him survive. Screw the animal-abusing psycho bitch. Alice suffers worse. To be fair though, the child acting here is fairly decent. Todd's played by no Kitten, pro rapper and record dealer 40. Yes, hit rap artist 40 stars in this as our kid hero.
I'm intrigued.
Which makes me so happy because it means somebody found success after starring on this crap. His dude bro Danny is also played by Magic School Bus adventurer Tim, giving Goosebumps another Miss Frizzle classmate on our bingo card. And lastly, Tim's bratty sassy sister Regina's portrayed by Bridget from Total Drama and Little Bear. So the quality acting's at least easier to swallow than Ghost Biatch. Tragically, many of these good performers are wasted on what's essentially a lame-ass gross-out episode with zero scares.
Oh, crap!
For at least half the tale, we get a Tales from the Crypt style attempt building up towards Todd's comeuppance, as he's a troublemaking jerk who enjoys toying with his beloved insects. But things change when the worms conspire against him. Yes, really, this is our plot. The worms also hate Todd just as much as we do, and his mistreatment of them leads them to seeking revenge! Honestly, this isn't half bad for a spooky story. Abused animals biting back at a gross oppressor and showing kids how bullying is awful naturally is a good story. Alas, this is not a solid success, as you'll all see soon. The next day, at generic middle school, the worms spring into action by causing a breakup between Todd and his bro through ruining their romantic lunch, bumming Todd out.
Is this supposed to be funny? I didn't do it. Sure, that's why you want to swap? You and your stupid jokes. Why would I? You're my best friend. Not anymore. Danny, I didn't do it. Honest.
How could this happen to me? I made my mistakes, got nowhere to run. The night goes on as I'm fading away. I'm sick of this life.
Yes, it gets even stupider from here on out. The plot's very simple. The worms claim revenge on Todd, so they slowly ruin his life, but it utterly fails by a combo of slow, boring-ass padding alongside a piss-poor attempt to get us to feel for Todd. The episode suffers the exact same issue as Stine's book does. It's very unclear how we're supposed to view Todd. In most stories like this, Barstow should be a love-to-hate villain protagonist, slowly working towards his ironic fate, bait. But the story actually wants us to sympathize with this brat?
What?
Yeah, we're meant to feel bad for a punk who bullies others, stirs up gross pranks, and tortures small animals for fun. Oh, boo-hoo, Todd lost his bro spect. Who cares? He deserves it. Todd's a total creep, in love with worms, to a very disturbing degree, but he also bullies and kills his bug collection like nothing, harasses his baby sister, disses his mom, gives off some loony red flags, and uses the critters to torment others, which makes this worse because he's just too slimy and mean to root for. Screw him!
I'll get you for this, Todd. You'll be sorry.
Ooh, I'm so scared.
Ew! You're as slimy as those worms you tortured.
It certainly doesn't help that the show also fails to inject humor in this, as we get more of the cringe campy comedy, which most hardcore Goose fans never chuckle at. Special mention going towards Todd's lawyer mom, who's a terrible comedian since all her jokes are bad puns about her job.
You've already put me on trial and found me guilty. You wouldn't let a judge treat your client like that, would you?
If you were my client, I'd tell you to plead insanity. Try me. The prosecution rests.
Get it? She's a lawyer! And as we all know, everyone who tries being funny only cracks puns about our jobs. This trash doesn't click for me. I view it as a total downvote. I better refresh with an upgrade of a drink because this PC of hardware is putting me to sleep mode. Better update to something you like, kiddos, because this comedy plug can't hack it.
What?
And this is pretty much our entire plot. The worms getting vengeance upon Todd, whilst he slowly puts it together that he's hated. The bugs stalk, attack, and torment the turd, while he assumes it's really his sister Bridget punking him, before uncovering that the worms are evil. Unfortunately, this neat idea is pretty much soiled on by the harsh reality that worms aren't scary. Unless you're a sissy girl, common earthworms are not very frightening or menacing as much as greater insects. When you think of creepy crawlies, what exactly comes to mind? Spiders are scary, wasps are scary, scarabs are scary, bees are scary, mantises are scary, and heck, even leeches are scarier variants of worms. But an average earthworm isn't intimidating. Worms are just pathetic. They lie around helplessly, wriggle and flail weakly, get consumed by deadlier predators, are used for bait, are at the bottom of the food chain, and only eat things that are long dead. Worms are handed the scraps of higher life forms. Worms are only scary if they're giant kaijus or used for gross out, which this episode overdoses on to iffy results. Go Eat Worms doesn't quite make the worms lethal, but rather plays up the gross out factor every chance the camera gets. Yet, it's not scary, it's just lazy. The worms fail at being monsters because the show only uses them for cheap gross out gags and disgusting visuals, but since a worm can't really do anything compared to other animals, it's ineffective. Plus, for a cheap gross out tale, there's a distinct lack of creative fun with the worms, as they're always just lying around and all the staff can do is zoom on their scary faces. I hope you love awkward shots holding on bugs because there's dozens wasting time. Bottom line, the worms are not super compelling antagonists. To make matters worse, this episode has some sloppy direction. Basically, the worms attack Todd, soil his happiness, try to rape him, gaslight the kid, and spy upon him, which is almost cool if ridiculous, but even then it fails because this creature feature ironically lacks the creatures being cool, since Todd hogs the spotlight. Since worms don't exactly make deep foes, the show gives more attention to Todd's wacky shenanigans over the monster attacks, which feel so aimless and clunky, meaning we're stuck with an unlikable villain protagonist undergoing a boring journey.
Oh, son of a gun. You thought I was gonna say son of a bitch, didn't you?
When we aren't building up tension of the worm stalking Todd, the plot as a whole is so messy, since it doesn't feel all that planned out well. We get endless focus on Barstow's boring drama, and the show tries to forge a character arc for him, which includes several random events. To the episode's minuscule credit, it removes tons of equally pointless crap the book had, which went nowhere. Several characters, including Patrick McKay, are adapted out. The pointless side quests Todd went on are deleted, the school hijinks are toned down, the red herrings are gone, and most mercifully of all, the stupid science fair's gone.
Hallelujah!
Oh, thank Primus. The dumbass science fair which went nowhere is purged. It was the worst waste of time on the page. The adaptation shaves off all fluff in order to focus on the main plot and dark scares. Alas, despite some valiant efforts to improve the pacing, it's still super clunky storytelling. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Todd quickly becomes besties with Danny again, and they get over Worm Spaghetti Gate like nothing happened, rendering that whole bromance breakup point a complete waste of time.
Well, that was pointless.
Yep, Danny forgives Todd because he's such a charmer, and this scene only exists for Todd to exposit that he's planning to get back at his sis Bridget for
Revenge!
He's going out bug collecting, but he's in for a slimy surprise. He confronts Sister Bridget on her pranks, only she reveals that she isn't involved in this at all, as she's been busy on her science project, making Todd ponder what's going on here. Ordinarily, I'd praise Kristen Fairley as a pro in this dump, but the show even makes her a brat too, rewarding us 0 likable characters in this wacky travesty.
Worms on the brain! Worms on the brain! Worms on the brain!
Yeah, I wish she'd get her tongue stuck on a pole again. Todd packs up for his scheme, but we're given one last shot to remind you stupid kids that the worms are evil, which we already know. You see, in a book you can get away with this because the audience only learned about the mystery as much as the characters were attached to. But on a visual medium, showing off the villains right away doesn't make the mystery mysterious when we know who the bad guys are. Oh, and worms aren't scary.
Yes. You sound like a broken MP3.
That night, Todd scouts for bugs, which can scare even Swarm and Norman, only to get sucked down a trap hole, where we at last finally gain a rare good part in this dung heap. The scary worm cave. Somehow the worms constructed this elaborate tunnel system under the local park and are in contact with the worms Barstow held prisoner as they devise this trap to lure Todd in and kill him by feeding the boy to their queen. A queen kaiju worm who lives in this hive, upset by how the boy's been abusing her lovely children and desires his head. I'll confess, I actually really love this concept. As pure stupid as it is, the Worm Cave and Queen Muppet are so cool. It's a darn shame that these awesome sets and killer effects got wasted on one of the worst episodes in the series, because the behind-the-scenes crew clearly poured a lot of effort here. Curse the god-awful writers and directing for screwing their hard work over. The Queen Worm could have been such an epic beast, but she's only in the climax. The Worm Queen's so amazing because it's big, it's all wiggly, and it eats everything.
That's horrible!
But of course, even when it has good, it still goes bad, because this final battle was so not built up at all. The queen was actually foreshadowed in the novel, but on the episode, it's not mentioned once, so it comes out at pure random.
Remember me, Jake?
No.
But oh well, at least Todd gets his karma. The worms traumatize our brat before the queen attacks, planning her dinner.
Help! Someone!
Yes, consume the human child! House, we don't do that joke anymore. Manny's dead. He lives on in our hearts. Todd barely climbs out just as the penis worm rises.
Phallic symbol, phallic symbol.
However, just as we get the coolest creature craze, it's ruined when, no kitten, the bug's scared off by a toy birdie.
Lame.
What? That was it? All that time wasted and all that hard work constructing a kaiju Muppet, and she pisses herself and retreats from a model birdie? This climax sucks. You had a badass monster and you cuck her at the best part? Way to neuter your scary boss fight. Oh, and exactly like one of the dumbest parts of the book, the bratty sister and pal somehow didn't see the dang giant sandworm.
The giant worm. It grabbed me. Did you see it?
Giant worm.
It's gone. Didn't get me.
What's he babbling about?
Huh? How the hell did you miss that? There was a giant dune monster loudly strangling your bro, which didn't retreat until it saw your bird, and you somehow missed it? This made even less sense on the page, since the queen's attack occurred in front of the school. This scene's so stupid.
I ate paint when I was a kid. Duh.
The girls were out at midnight for some reason, and indirectly saved Todd, where the kid gains a newfound dread of worms. And I guess the queen goes back to chillin'. Yep, Todd lives in the end, winning a happy ending.
Whatever.
Seriously, the one twerp you wished would die actually survives. What a crock. So Todd lives, he reforms from his evil ways, fixes Sister Bridget's birdie, which she was already using fixed earlier.
Great continuity!
And he at last kicks the worm bucket, now fully redeemed as a good boy.
This house is now officially worm-free.
It's a very crummy redemption arc, as Todd gets off super easy. But just when everything's coming up Millhouse, we reach our twist ending. Todd salvages his bromance with Danny as they go fishing, before revealing that he's upgraded to a new animal to harm, fishies!
Don't worry, it's a stupid little minnow. They don't feel a thing.
Isn't that kind of cruel? I mean, like, making them suffer like that? Don't be such a baby.
I love being a jerk!
Yep, he hasn't learned a thing. Todd's still a dick. But in an ultra confusing ending, Todd gets more karma as the fish capture and reel in him down under, where it's too tough to make anything out. But just as you presume the brat's done for, nope, the fish hold Todd hostage for 1 minute, then let him go.
Lame.
I actually did like the sandwich being used to hook the kid and drag him to his death, but it's ruined by a combo of Barstow weaseling out of trouble again alongside a blurry, confusing water effect, where you don't know what's happening. It's not only lame, but messy as heck.
I'll give you up fishing, I promise. I'm too small. You gotta bring me back. You guys look like nice fish. Please let me go. Thanks. What? Gonna make me swim back?
I don't know what the hell I'm looking at.
This finale's garbage, because essentially Todd escapes scot-free with all evil. It's not funny, not scary, super cheap since they couldn't get a 10-second clip of 40 in a pool, and you can't even tell what's going on. I never understood what happened here for years until I had to actually listen closely to the off-screen dialogue. To make matters worse, even the staff were baffled by this twist. According to the episode's writer, Rick Drew, he actually posted messages informing folks that Todd was supposed to die, being either eaten by the fish or drowned to death in this scene. But that makes no sense because the dialogue's clearly telling you that no, that's not what happens because they release him. There's allegedly an alternate ending out there where Todd did die here, but apparently behind Rick Drew's back, they changed it to the messy slop you see now. However, this only makes this bizarre finale worse because all it informs me is that even the filmmakers weren't all on the same page when shooting this crap. The director also confessed that nobody liked how this episode turned out because nobody agreed on anything.
Oh, doesn't anybody read the script?
However, before I grant mercy to you by wrapping things up, we do have to address how this is the biggest change to the story. In the book, Todd actually suffers differently. After Todd ousts the worms from his basement, he goes back to hanging with Danny Boy. Instead of upgrading to torturing fish, he changes to catching butterflies, wanting to form his own collection of rare beautiflies to replace those uncool worms. But just as he gets his final pieces, he's ambushed by Mothra, a giant butterfly who swoops in and shanks him. Yes, Todd gets stabbed to death by Mothra, ending the tale. Alas, the show had to redo this twist because they simply couldn't afford the effects for a giant kaiju butterfly.
Money!
So instead, the show cheaps out with the off-screen fish attack where Todd lives anyway, making the story even more worthless than before.
I ate paint when I was a kid. Die.
Anywho, that's the sickening fish guts go eat worms. And it was Alaskan bull! This episode sucks. All these decades later, and it's still understandably worthless dirt. Todd's an awful protagonist, unlikable in every way. The moral fails horribly when the bad kid gets a slap on the wrist for torturing animals. It deletes half the book, indulges in cheap gross out, is not scary, not funny, not amusing, dull as hell, has some confusing cinema style, the Worm Queen's wasted for a stupid gag, cheesy effects, doesn't know how to utilize its monsters well, clunky storytelling, and has one of the most atrocious conclusions ever. The saddest part is, there genuinely is a good story here, teaching kids to not be cruel bullies or torment small animals for fun. But as you saw, it fails to amount to anything half clever. If you never feared worms before, don't worry, you still won't after sitting through this. I feel so sorry for the sets and props department because the worm cave and puppets honestly look fairly swell, but ended up pissed away in favor of the misadventures of Kid 40, screwing around doing nothing but being nasty. Go Eat Worms is not the #1 worst episode for me, but it's a really high number regardless. What can I even add? This tale's so horrible that even R.L. Stine hates it. I reward this science project a decayed skull, which is appropriate because it's worm food. Don't recommend at all. It's boring and a waste of thought. Go Eat Worms had so much potential to be reforged into a stronger epic, but failed so badly that it needs to make like a worm and dive 6 feet under. I'm your host, Catastrophe, and I hope to never see insect horror for a long time. Cat? We've got company. House, get the net!
The prosecution rests.